Hey guys, it's Becky. It's it's like 11. It's 11:11. It's 11:11 at night, and I just got an anonymous ask in my Tumblr inbox that was kind of angry, but was asking a valid question, and so I thought I should just kind of answer that really quickly. I apologize for my appearance. I was in bed, like doing some readings for school, so I obviously wasn't planning on making a video, which is why I'm wearing pajamas and my hair is bad and I have no makeup on. But I thought this question was important to answer, and I was going to write a text post, but I didn't want to spend too long editing something until it wasn't honest anymore. The question was basically, you work on native archaeology sites, especially in the north, but the only photos you ever post are of white people, and so kind of, how do you feel as a colonizer coming into an area and being a white archaeologist? And I think the question was basically asking me how I feel about exploiting northern native culture. And I think that in a lot of ways, that's actually a really valid question. I don't fault anybody for feeling that way and coming across my blog and looking at things and just automatically assuming that, I come into what I do as a white archaeologist with very colonial tendencies. Tumblr's great. It's very liberal and very radical in a lot of ways. And so I really admire that there's this side of Tumblr, and so I'm not surprised at all that I got a question like that. And, as an archaeologist, sometimes I struggle with the idea that I'm a white person working on the history of people who are not me, and is that exploitative? Is it wrong? Luckily, I have a very good answer for the question, I think, and that uh, not all the photos I post, especially from last summer, are of white people. So, it's a valid maybe assumption, but it's incorrect. I don't actually post a lot of photos of people, mostly because even though I have everyone's permission to post on my blog, I don't actually have. I don't tell them every time I post a photo of them, and my blog is a little bit secretive. So I don't like to post pictures of people's faces some of the time without asking them. And so a lot of the times you'll see, people's hands or the back of their heads or something, and maybe they look white, but they aren't. A lot of the teams that I've worked with, sorry, in the past have been very multi-ethnic, interdisciplinary as well, and so we have people coming to the projects from a variety of upbringings, class backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, academic backgrounds, and I think that's great. I think that makes archaeology this awesome, awesome thing. I worked on a project once where it was run by a Peruvian team, and it was mostly made up of Peruvians, Canadians, Venezuelan, South African, and Somali. And I thought that was pretty cool. This particular project is a Canadian project in the Canadian North, so we're mostly working with Canadian people. And, the project is on the grant of a white man. So, it could easily be super white, but it's not. And there actually were as many women as men on site, which is great. So there was a gender equality in a lot of ways. And not everyone was Canadian. We had a Frenchman on the project, which was cool. I choose to work with people who are really involved in community outreach and kind of letting people have an ownership of their own heritage, because I'm not Indigenous, and so I only want to work on projects that actively work towards this kind of community building. And so this project was like that, and my supervisor is amazing, and he's really good at this kind of thing. He's very in tune and locked in to discussions with community. In fact, the project that we're working on, we are only choosing sites based on whether or not the local community thinks that they are important. Sites that are at risk from destruction and that are also important to the local community. So we're actively using their kind of definitions and hierarchies of site importance in our choices and what to, excavate and things. So that is really important, I think, too. But I've been dancing around this and not actually answering the question, but we do have Indigenous workers on this project, and they're on many of the projects that I work on, if not all. So we specifically, since we didn't have any archaeologists who were Indigenous, we specifically set out to, as we usually do, hire local workers to come up and be involved in the project. So we had someone who had been working on the project before who was just like the greatest dude ever. He'd been living up in the area for his entire life. And we also had another Inuvialuit worker who has also worked in the area multiple times, and she actually has a degree in anthropology from a Canadian university, which is great because not only is she a local person with a stake in the project, but she also is quite passionate about archaeology and thinks it's really awesome and loves working on projects like this. So she's the ideal candidate, and she's actually from the closest community to where the site was, which is a very, very tiny community. One of the jokes was the older gentleman was saying that he knows that his family, his like great 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 grandfather, probably lived at the site across the way. So every time we dug up something, he'd think, "Oh, is that my grandfather's harpoon?" And so I think that's really awesome and really important because I'm connected to this in a very different way than someone whose direct ancestors would have lived at the site. And I think it's a very valid assumption, in white Western academia to just assume that all projects are only made up of white people. But in this case, in a lot of the projects I've worked on, it's not. And it's really important to me and to the people that I choose to work with. I think that projects aren't whitewashed because this is not my history. This is not my culture. But I have made it kind of my part of my life's work to show people how awesome this history and this culture is. I think it's really important that Canadians hear about the amazing, awesome, kind of great stuff coming out of the Indigenous North. I hope that answered your question. I think you probably wanted me to get angry and fight with you, but on Tumblr I get questions like this every once in a while. But so no, I don't only post pictures of my white crew, and I do in a lot of ways can feel conflicted, but not for the reasons I think that you're suggesting. So I hope that answers your question. Now I'm gonna go to sleep.